Hello everyone, welcome to Dell Networking OM Tech Talk. This is Bill Acevedo. Today's topic is OM's automation framework, specifically how it can be used to control power on-off to POE ports. So you can actually control lighting with Dell switches, and as long as they're being managed under OM. And so if you've already seen the automation framework and events and alarms and event processing rules and actions and how they all work together, this might be a little bit of a repeat, but this is a unique case and another example of how you can leverage the automation framework to automate devices. Okay. So the demo highlights here. Again, the purpose of this demo is to show how an OM managed POE Ethernet switch can turn POE power on or off based on detected utility power. And so in this case, we're going to talk about emergency lighting. And so the scenario here is, when the emergency lighting, when there's utility power to emergency lighting, it doesn't need to be on, so it should be off. And then if for some reason you lose utility power, then you want those lights to kick on. And so the scenario I'm going to use here is this diagram here, which shows basically what resembles our 30 and then 3024P switch. And you'll see here on the left you have a direct utility power on power supply 1. And then on supply 2 you have a UPS power connected to utility power. So the idea here is if you do really lose utility power, at least power supply 2 will have UPS on it still powering this switch. And then I show here gig E1017 through GE 1024 are 7 ports that have emergency lighting on them. I have another here, for example, just to show that you might have ports that are just charging batteries. Now, for this example, I don't actually have lights to show on or off. What I do have is a POE device. It's just a phone, a POE phone that's powered by POE only. That's all it needs to power it. And so we'll see that turning on and off. And so again, this could be cameras, they could be lights, they could be phones, anything that's POE capable can be controlled in this way. I did have a video link here to this PowerPoint, but it was quite noisy, and so I think what I'm going to do is show you the actual, what it would look like if you were actually on the switch and you had something plugged in. So let's just go ahead and look at that. So again, I'm using a 3024P switch. I'm going to show you here on port 20 is where I'm only going to have one device connected here, port 20. And so I'm going to plug in an Ethernet cable on port 20, and then I'm going to plug that into a phone. And so all it has is one connection, and that's to the POE Ethernet RJ45 jack. And so you see it's off now. And so this is to simulate some maybe an emergency light where power is off. As long as you have utility power on, the lights are off. You don't need them. So I'm going to push that behind here. We're going to go around behind the switch, and I'm going to show you the scenario here again. Power supply 2 is plugged in. Sorry about the lighting. And then we got power supply 1, which is our direct connect utility power. Power supply 2, again, remember, has a UPS on it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect power supply 1, mimicking a utility power failure. First of all, let me show you that the phone is off, and we're going to unplug it. And so what's going to happen is an event's going to be emitted by the device. It's going to invoke an action rule, and it's going to turn the power on. There you go, it's on. Pretty cool. And so let's do the reverse. Utility power is now restored. We want our lights to go back off because we don't need our lights if they're emergency lights. Power's on. Again, the device emits an event to OM. OM invokes a processing rule, which invokes an action, which turns it off. It takes about 5 to 7 seconds. There you go, it's off. So that's the demonstration to show you how that would look from the device. So let's just walk through some details here. Just for the purposes of completion here, I outlined these scenarios on the next 2 pages. If we want to go to case 1 here. So we see we want to turn the POE lights on. So case 1, emergency lights are off, utility power fails. Emergency lighting is then turned on. So the process is the power supply failed, the POE switch sends an alarm to OM. OM event processing rule is invoked and sends a power on command to the emergency lighting for the POE ports. And so it's going to turn on all 7 of those ports, GE 1017 to GE 1024. And then I just outlined the second scenario 2. That was it, scenario 2. Back up here, down here. This is the case where the lights are on, we want to turn them off. And so the power supply is restored, and it sends an alarm to OMN, OMN invokes another processing rule that says, okay, turn the POE ports back on, and that's what we saw. Okay? Just to give you a little bit of details here of what's going on, and I'll show you this actually in the EPR in OMN. This is the event that we wait for. When the power supply fails, this event is generated with a power supply state equal to 0, meaning no power. And then the command action script that is invoked on this, basically to turn the ports on, is we send a config T, the interface name, power inline auto. This basically says that the port should be listening for anything connected. If there's something connected, then power it on. And then the reverse is true here. We get the same event when the power is restored. We get a power supply state 1 saying I have power now. And so we need to send an action now to turn off the emergency lights. And so we do the same thing, similar thing, config T, interface name, and then we say power inline never. This basically says do not provide power to these ports. And then finally here, it does take about 7 seconds to activate, and this is typically within the 15-second requirement by most emergency lighting standards. So let's just go and take a look now at OMN. First thing we're going to look at is the event processing rules, so you get an idea how that works. In definitions and rules, I'm going to search for my rules I created. So here's the two rules, one to turn them off and one to turn them on. So let's just take the one where we turn the lights on. When the power supply fails, this one gets invoked. Let's just edit that and look at it. Basically give it a name and enable it. There's filtering conditions here, and this is where we tell it what event to wait for. And this is that one event mon power supply state change. So if we see this event, that's going to pass the at least the event criteria, and it passes it on to a filter condition. Now we're saying that if within that event we see power supply state equal to 0, meaning I detected power off, and in this case I'm also saying if it comes from a specific device, you could leave this blank or you could add multiple devices if you have multiple POEs that you want to respond here, but we're just saying this one device for now. And if it fits these filter conditions, we're going to pass it on to the action, and the action is this thing called the demo POE, turn POE emergency light ports on. So let's go look at that action. So I'm going to go to resources and then actions, search for POE. So we see our actions here to turn the lights on. Let's take a look at that one in some detail here. It's a basic ACLI configure command for managed devices. There's no attributes in this. It's just a straight embedded command line script. And I wrap this with some preliminary commands so you can see the output before, see what the status is of the ports, and then you do the configuration on the ports, and then you show it again to show afterwards. So if you manually invoke this, it would show that information. Through the EPR, you won't see this. But so basically we give the command config T and then give it the interface, and then say power inline auto, and this basically says to turn the port on. And I just do that for the interfaces I need. Now there's more elegant ways to do this, but the purpose of this demo I just hard-coded the interfaces that we wanted on here. So that's how you turn them on, and then vice versa, when you turn them off, the EPR is going to do the same filter criteria, except for it's going to say looking for the trap with power status of 1, which means it's on again, and then it's going to say turn the lights off, because you don't need the emergency lights on. So let's edit that one. The command's a little bit different here, similar but different. Config T, set the interface, but this time you say power inline never. That basically says do not provide any POE power to these ports. Okay? So that's how you turn them off. And that's how the event processing rules work. Let me show you, before we finish this, let me show you how this would look from a command line and a specific device and how the command line changes. Okay, I've got a putty session up to my device here. What I'm going to do is give a simple command, show power inline. And so what we see here is all of the power ports that we have. And I got a variety here, my GigE ports. And so what we see here is I've got ports 10 through 16. They're basically always on. They say auto. If they're plugged in, So it's in switching mode. They're not plugged in right now, but if they're plugged in, I'm just designating these as power charging. So you may have an RJ45 supported POE battery that lets you charge it to POE. So you can charge in those emergency lights. And then on these other ports, 17 through 24, I've also just named these ports as emergency lights so that I know. But you see that they're now set to never and they're off. There's nothing here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the box and do similar to that first demo. I'm going to unplug power supply 1, and what I expect to see is these come back on. So let me walk over there and turn that off, and I will be right back, and we will look at this again. Okay, I have unplugged the switch. So now we're going to give the power inline status, or show power inline command again. Okay, so we look down here, now we see that the emergency lights are, for 17 through 24, they are now back in auto mode, meaning that they are now actively listening for connected devices that they can power on. Now, we saw I only had port 20 connected, and so that's the only one that's showing on right now. Had we had lights in all of these, we'd see a similar type of thing. Incidentally, you see here there's different classes that can be applied to the device and then showing the power. You can control actually the level of power if you have the right command. When you power these on, you can restrict or allow more power to certain devices or others. You just need to add the command to the action when you turn these on. Okay, let's do the reverse now. Let's go and turn the port. Let's go restore utility power, and we'll see that these go back to never. So I will be right back after I plug it back in. Okay, I've restored power, and let's just do the command again. And sure enough, we see on port 17 through 24, we have now set them back to never, meaning they are off. Okay, so you've seen the automation framework in action before, and now you've seen a specific case here to allow you to send commands to control POE power to the ports. Thanks for joining us.